This is absolutely perfect for the Vancouver Canucks as a recent report revealed the top off seasons as they rank every team, and where the Vancouver Canucks currently stand on this list will have fans buzzing. We're going to break down some key additions by the Vancouver Canucks. It's one player that looks like an absolute dark horse, and how many of these signings change everything for the Canucks heading into next season. We're going to break down all this plus so much more later on in this episode. Before we get into that, if you're part of the 61% watching and you haven't hit that sub button yet, it's completely free. It helps us out a ton. And in return, we'll give you daily updates from all around the Canucks, from news, rumors, reports, prospect updates, game recaps, everything you can think of, you can catch right here on Canucks Digest. So let's try to get that number down to 60%. But with that, let's just hop straight into it today, where we do know the Vancouver Canucks had a very interesting offseason. A lot of fans might look at this and say it was a failed of an offseason, but a lot of outsiders and a lot of fans, including myself, do think the Canucks have done a good job, and they're not done yet. Now, going into this report by Adam, this will be linked down below by the Hockey News. He goes in and he's been ranking every team by their offseason, and the Vancouver Canucks currently sit in 7th place. Now, with the Canucks and a lot of fans, this is awesome to hear. Being optimistic about this team after failing to make the postseason is kind of hard to do, but with the Canucks right now, they do have multiple players that are set to be game changers for this team going into next year. Now, the first one being, of course, we know Evander Kane joining the team as Patrik Allvin traded for the enforcer, goal scoring enforcer, the power forward in Evander Kane, and his impact is going to be a lot higher than a lot of people expected. Now, going into Evander Kane, we know he can score goals, throw hits, but everything Evander Kane has done when it comes to scoring, hitting, throwing hits, going into the playoffs and putting up amazing numbers every single year with the Edmonton Oilers, all signs are pointing to Evander Kane having another great, outstanding year with the Canucks. We know, not playing in the postseason with the Edmonton Oilers in 23-24, he did score 24 goals, throwing over 250 hits. Kane is going to add a new edge to the team that the Canucks have been missing since losing JT Miller and Nikita Zadorov. Now listen, Zadorov's going to be a different style, a defenseman that's going to light you up, but Evander Kane is going to protect his teammates, throw hits, and change the game for them going into the playoffs. Now, looking at Evander Kane's career playoff numbers, things get a little crazy. Going back to the 21-22 season all the way up to the end of last year's postseason, current leaders in goals during that span, we see Leon Draisaitl, Zach Hyman, sitting at number 9 of Evander Kane, just below Nathan MacKinnon, who won a cup, and just above Mikko Rantanen, who was an absolute nightmare to deal with in the playoffs this season. Evander Kane's going to come in and win. I'm not saying if, when the Canucks do make the postseason again, we're going to see the true value from Evander Kane after playing his first full season in his hometown team, and when he gets in the playoffs and starts to bleed into the effect, and no pun intended, when he starts punching people, but he's going to have a huge impact on this roster moving forward. Now, going back to this, we know the Canucks did lose some players, which we will touch on very briefly towards the end, but the big thing, and the next one, is Kravtsov. Now, with Kravtsov, a lot of people might look at this and say, hey, Josh Levo just scored 40 goals in the KHL, but the big thing with Kravtsov is still a very young player, 25 years old, scoring 27 goals last year in the KHL, going into the playoffs, putting up 7 points in 19 games. He still has a lot of room to improve, and his contract does get very interesting. Now listen, Kravtsov return is not a shock to any Canucks fans. Him coming back, it was pretty much writing on the wall. After he signed the 2-year deal, he hinted at coming back, and we did see it. We're all being did bring him back into this roster, and I think we're going to see him a lot more in the lineup than a lot of people are expecting. Now with his contract, he is an RFA at the end of this, but it is a Group 6 UFA. Now looking at this, if Kravtsov plays less than 80 games by the end of the season, he will become a UF eligible player going into free agency with no rights to the Canucks. If he plays over 80 games, he will still be an RFA with this team, and currently Kravtsov is sitting at the very moment of 64 games. So if the Canucks are and wanting to keep him within this organization, they will have to go out and play him for a minimum of 16 games within this Canucks lineup. And I do expect once we see more moves, there's going to be players on the move out to bring in a center on the second line. So we could see Kravtsov get a full-time position in that middle six. And I do expect some of his NHL or KHL experience to come into effect when he does come in. Now, obviously, the biggest picture of why Patrik Allvin had a great offseason was locking this core up. Bringing back Brock Boeser on a 7-year, $7 million deal, extending Thatcher Demko for 3 years at 8.5, which is a little bit, but if he does turn it around, this is well worth it, and extending Conor Garland to a 6-year deal. Patrik Allvin went out to basically lock this core up for the next 6, 7, 8 years as he's bringing in key players. And listen, locking up cores that just missed the playoff is something that a lot of people might frown upon, but these are very good players. Canucks for life. Well, Conor Garland, not so much, but still, Conor Garland, an amazing piece. This is a Canucks team that is inspiring to win a Stanley Cup. This is the city that wants a Stanley Cup, and this is very much a ride or die season. Listen, Patrik Allvin gets a lot of hate. Does he deserve it? A lot of the time, yes, he does. Jim Rutherford is included in this as well. But Patrik Allvin does do tidy work on not holding on to bad contracts. If he signs you to an extension and you don't work out, he will move on from you. But the biggest thing is, going into the Canucks season next year, they're going to have to make a signing or trade for center. There's a lot of options. Jack Kravtsov is a name that floats around quite a bit. Pavel Zacha is a name that I just touched on yesterday, so go check on that as well. But things are lining up for the Canucks to have one of the deeper rosters that we've seen in quite some time, and I'm expecting them to be quite competitive going into next year. Now, the biggest thing, Evander Kane, it's going to be very interesting where Adam Foote wants to play him within this lineup. We could see him as far as up at the top line or the third line, depending on who he meshes with, where he wants to play, and how his health continues on after missing the full regular season last year. Filip Hronek is a guy that's going to be very interesting as well, as if we could see him move out in a trade or keeping him at center. This is a team that needs to get Kravtsov some minutes, so maybe we see him kind of cycle in with Linus Karlsson on the fourth line, maybe up to the third line, depending on matchups. What is your thoughts, Canucks fans? This team is getting very interesting. They have $3.2 million in cap space after moving Dakota Joshua, who is a part of key departures. And listen, I'm not going to sit here and say losing Puster and Dakota Joshua, plus Sheila, plus many others, is a good thing, but the Canucks are trying to build this new mold, a fast, hard to play against team. And listen, Suter and Dakota Joshua do fit that as well, but Patrik Allvin is trying to patch this team up. And how would you grade them? Listen, they were ranked 7th on the grading with Adam's report. There's a lot of people that enjoy, but Canucks fans, do you think this is perfect? Do you think they've done enough? Do you think they need to do more? Who would you like the Canucks to go out and get next or trade out next? Listen, don't say Elias Pettersson, because he's one of my favorite. Plus, I don't think, and I'm willing to bet money, that he is not on the move. But what's your guys' thoughts on this? Go down and leave a comment down below. While you're down there, leave a like, subscribe, share this with your friends. We'll be back for another episode, so keep your eye out for that. But I've been your host, Mark Pye, and take care.